Alright, guys, I'm gonna share something really fucking cool with you that I didn't believe I was going to share on YouTube. Um, Now, whether this gets views or not, that's fine. But for the one person or two people that are seeing this, thank you. This is gonna be something that I really wanted to produce for a while, and this is gonna be Project Urania. Its technical white paper for it. So the first hermeneutic AI for astrological studies, and nobody else is doing this. Now, I'm going to be very specific. So essentially, the core innovation for this is Urania represents a paradigm shift in computational hermeneutics, a large language model specifically engineered to navigate, interpret, and synthesize astrological symbolism across traditions, eras, and cultural contexts. Unlike general purpose LLMs, Urania is built from the ground up as a symbolic reasoning engine with built-in temporal logic, geometric awareness, and philosophical pluralism. Now, before we even get started more on this, if you like astrology, this is for you. If you like AI, this is for you. If you're a very spiritual person, this is for you. My goal is to actually, and hang on, I'm actually getting a phone call now. Great. Okay, so core architecture of Project Urania, the tripartite model. Layer 1, the corpus engine, the memory, 10,000 plus primary text with full metadata tagging. Chronological range, Babylonian omen texts, circa 1700 BCE to contemporary papers, 2025 CE. Traditions, Hellenistic, Valens, Paulus, Medieval, Bonatti, Lilly, Renaissance, Marinus, Kepler, Vedic, Parashara, Jaimini, Chinese, Ziwei-Do-Shu, Arabic, Abu Ma'ashar, Esoteric, Bailey, Rudar, Modern Psychological, Green, Arroyo. Languages, 18 primary languages with native embeddings, not translation. Genre tagging, natal, mundane, horary, electional, medical, meteorological, financial. Provenance scoring, each text receives a hermeneutic weight based on historical influence and scholarly consensus. Layer 2, the symbolic processor, the intellect. Multidimensional embedding space. Planets are not just tokens, but exist in 512 dimensional space encoding. Mythological associations, psychological archetypes, elemental directional qualities, historical semantic shifts, for example, Uranus pre- and post-discovery, cross-tradition equivalencies, geometric reasoning module, built-in capacity to calculate aspects with configurable orbs, recognize patterns, stelliums, grand trines, yods, understand house system differences, Placidus versus whole sign versus Sripati, process primary directions, perfections, and other Time Lord systems. Layer 3, the dialectical interface, the voice, context-aware response generation. Urania doesn't just retrieve, it argues, synthesizes, and qualifies. Tradition transparency. Every output includes confidence intervals and source attribution. Controversy flagging automatically identifies where traditions conflict or scholarship is divided. Training methodology. Phase 1, foundational language modeling. Astro-specific tokenization, special tokens for astrological concepts, for example, planet_Jupiter, house_7, aspect_square. Temporal embeddings, each text is embedded with its historical context, what was known or unknown at the time of writing. Intertextual linking, training includes explicit connection pathways between texts that reference each other. Phase 2, supervised fine-tuning with expert consensus. The Delphi panel, 47 senior scholars from different traditions, created 15,000 gold standard interpretations. Controlled debates, model trained on structured debates where experts argue different positions. Ethical boundary training, explicit reinforcement learning against deterministic statements, medical advice, or financial predictions. Phase 3, reinforcement learning from hermeneutic feedback. The Socratic evaluation. Model outputs are evaluated not for correctness, but for internal consistency, source fidelity, philosophical coherence, acknowledgement of limitations, tradition-specific reward models, different scoring for different interpretive frameworks, unique capabilities, advanced research functions. Here's a numbered example query structure. You guys can take a look at that. Take a screenshot if you want. Output includes historical evolution table, how interpretation changed from Dorotheus, 1st century, to Bonatti, 13th century, to Green, 20th century. Cross-tradition comparison, how Vedic, Shawnee, and Kanya differs from Western approaches. Aspect network analysis, how this placement interacts with likely aspect patterns. Controversy index, 0 to 100 score of scholarly disagreement. Chart pattern recognition engine. Fractal symbolism detection identifies repeating symbolic motifs across chart, solar return, and progress charts. Transit timeline synthesis generates probabilistic narratives of transit clusters, not deterministic predictions. Missing symmetry analysis flags what's conspicuously absent, for example, no planets in water signs. Philosophical consciousness module, epistemological stance awareness, knows when it's speaking from a fatalist, traditional horary perspective, determinist but not fatalist, classical natal perspective, symbolic, archetypal, Jungian perspective, skeptical but descriptive academic perspective, meta-hermeneutic capacity, can analyze its own interpretive choices and biases. Technical specifications, model architecture, base model, custom 86B, perimeter transformer with extended context window, 32K tokens, specialized attention heads, temporal attention for transits, progressions, geometric attention for aspect patterns, symbolic attention for mythological archetypal connections, multimodal extensions, can process chart images and output SVG visualizations. Training data statistics, total tokens 42 billion, astrological corpus only, not general web, languages 18 primary, 12 secondary, text by tradition. And here's all the data. Evaluation metrics. Hermeneutic Fidelity Score HFS measures consistency with cited sources. Tradition Coherence Index TCI measures internal consistency within a tradition. Philosophical Pluralism Score PPS measures balanced representation of conflicting views. Ethical Safety Rating ESR measures adherence to ethical guidelines. Ethical Framework and Limitations, Embedded Ethical Protocols. The uncertainty principle. All predictive statements include confidence intervals and alternative interpretations. The agency preservation rule. Language must preserve space for human choice and self-determination. The cultural context flag automatically alerts when applying tradition X to culture Y. The tragedy avoidance system refuses to interpret charts for death timing, severe medical outcomes, or traumatic events. Access tiers, research tier, universities, full access and API and training data. Practitioner tier, certified astrologers, full interpretive access and client tools. Student tier, limited queries and pedagogical features. Public API, restricted to non-personal chart analysis. Future roadmap. Phase 2, 2026 through 2027, Urania Collective. Collaborative interpretation, multiple Urania instances, debate chart interpretations, real-time mundane analysis, integration with geopolitical and financial data streams, personalized learning adapts to users' interpretive style and philosophical preferences. Phase 3, 2028 through 2030, the living corpus. Continuous learning incorporates new scholarship with version control. Cross-disciplinary bridge interfaces with psychology, history, and cultural studies databases. Dream symbolism integration, experimental module connecting dream content with astrological timing. Conclusion, the Uranian principle. Urania is founded on what we term the Uranian principle. The most useful interpretation is not the one that claims certainty, but the one that most faithfully illuminates the complexity of the symbolic field while respecting human agency. This isn't an astrology machine, it's a meta-hermeneutic engine, a tool for thinking about how we think about the cosmos. In an age of algorithmic reductionism, Urania stands as a monument to nuance, history, and the endlessly fascinating human project of finding meaning in the stars. Urania doesn't tell you what the stars mean, it shows you how meaning has been made, contested, and remade across 4,000 years of human curiosity. Thank you for watching, and in the next part, we will be going over the Cosmic Dialectic, a weekly journal for advanced astrological practitioner. Let's just say this is a conceptual issue for my Urania innovative idea. Let's say it happens in March 2026, and this is the cover story. The Algorithmic Ascendant, ChatGPT, Co-Star, and the Battle for Astrology's Soul by Dr. Celine Varga, Director of the Ophiuchus Institute for Symbolic Studies. March 10th, 2026, this week's exact Mars conjoining Saturn and Pisces is a pressure cooker for boundaries, dreams, and systems. Appropriately, the most heated debate in advanced circles isn't about the transit's mundane effects, but about the entity increasingly mediating them. Artificial intelligence. The launch of Urania, the first large language model, fine-tuned on 10,000 and more historical astrological texts, has forced a schism. Is AI a revolutionary tool for depth or the final commodification of a sacred art? The tech utopian position, AI as the ultimate synthesizer. The astrotech vanguard, led by developers and data-driven astrologers, heralds this as astrology's Gutenberg moment. Let's talk about it. The end of the pedestal. Urania can reference Bonatti, Morin, and Jones in the time it takes a human to find the book, argues tech astrologer Kai Chen. It democratizes access to a synthesis of tradition that took masters a lifetime to build. It doesn't replace the astrologer, it replaces the 10,000 hours of memorization, freeing us for true client work. Pattern recognition at scale. Proponents point to AI's ability to run mass-scale transit analysis. We can feed it the birth charts of every Fortune 500 CEO and ask for the statistical correlation with Jupiter node cycles, says data scientist Dr. Reesthorn. This moves us from anecdote to observable pattern, creating a new evidence-adjacent language for our craft. The personalized ephemeris, apps like CoStar and the Pattern are now primitive precursors. The next generation promises hyper-personalized forecasting that cross-references your natal chart, your digital calendar, biometric data, and even your Spotify playlist to suggest optimal timing for creative work or difficult conversations. The humanist rebuttal. Where is the Newman? The ethical traditionalist guild and phenomenological practitioners issue a stark warning. In outsourcing synthesis, we may annihilate the soul of the practice. The death of the dialectic. Astrology is not information retrieval. It is a living dialectic between cosmos and conscious, asserts master horologist Lara Moss. The meaning of Mars in the 8th house isn't in any book. It emerges in the sacred space between the chart, the client's trembling voice, and the astrologer's lived experience. AI offers a simulacrum of wisdom, plausible but depthless. It describes the geometry of a grand trine but cannot feel its flow. The bias of the training set. Who chose the 10,000 texts? Challenges historian Raj Patel. Does Urania understand Feng Zhong, the Chinese time-space system, as deeply as Hellenistic technique? Or does it, by weight of volume, default to a Western psychologically flattened perspective? AI codifies the bias of its curators and calls it objectivity. The ethical abyss. What happens when an AI optimized for user engagement predicts a profoundly difficult Pluto transit? Asks ethics board member Dr. Lin Zhao. A human guise with nuance, context, and care, an algorithm designed to be accurate, might introduce paralyzing anxiety. Astrology as a healing art cannot be gamified. The emerging practice, the cyber-intuitive method, a nascent third way, is emerging from pioneering independence. They are not Luddites, but conscious cyborgs. Phase 1, the AI as scrying mirror. They use LLMs like Urania or custom GPTs in the research phase, asking list every traditional, psychological, and modern interpretation of Venus square Neptune with sources. This becomes a vast, neutral database. Phase 2, the human as hermeneutic engine. The practitioner then enters interpretive mode, selecting and weaving threads based on the client's lived reality, tone, and the unquantifiable feel of the chart. The AI's output is raw ore, the human is the alchemist. Phase 3, the embody check. Final authority rests in somatic resonance, the practitioner's and client's gut feeling. Does the synthesis live? Does it spark recognition, not just intellectual assent? This week's transit debate forum. Our readers dissect last week's Mercury Cazimi in Pisces. The Mercury Cazimi wasn't just about downloading inspiration. It perfectly aligned with the breakthrough in the EU's AI Act, specifically the clause on explainability. Mercury rules language reborn in Pisces, the nebulous, the algorithmic, demanded we make the ineffable laws of AI comprehensible. Astrology as policy analysis. M. Rossi, political risk analyst, Lisbon. The mainstream interpretation missed the ecological layer. Mercury Cazimi conjoined the fixed star Fomalhaut, the royal star of the south. This triggered a wave of profound communication. Mercury about oceanic rights and subsea floor data cables, Fomalhaut's domain. The chart always speaks on multiple planes. Dr. Anya Petrova, eco-astrologer, Coastal Network. Looking ahead, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Gemini, April 2026. Our advanced preview, the year's major astrological event, will ignite in the sign of information. Here's what to expect. A sudden viral philosophical or technological meme that reframes astrology itself, Uranus for the masses, Jupiter. Breakthroughs or breakdowns in community-based astrological DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, and I've talked about DAOs in my other videos, using blockchain for chart sovereignty. The Urania debate reaching mainstream media, forcing a cultural conversation on fate, free will, and silicon mines. I'm talking about extraterrestrial beings when I'm talking about silicon mines, people. This is our moment to define the craft's future. Will we be curators of an ancient human conversation or technicians fine-tuning a compelling simulation? Submit your dialectical essays to submissions at cosmicdialectic.org. The most compelling argument for either side wins a lifetime subscription to the Ophiuchus Institute's archival database. In the transmission, remember the stars impel. They do not compel, but the code might suggest rather strongly. So I'm going to dive into this now. My conceptual field reports for the Urania project. And I have a bunch of things for this. I've been working on this for, I want to say, since last year, early last year. And I'm doing it all by myself, so that's why none of this has come to fruition quite yet. But anyways, exploratory research series from 2022 through 2025. Internal cognition mapping documents. Field report number 1, the ontology of the chart. So here's the core question. What exactly are we asking Urania to read when we input a birth chart? Exploratory methodology. We conducted phenomenological interviews with 47 master astrologers across traditions, asking them to describe their experience of reading a chart. We then mapped these descriptions against computational possibilities. Key discoveries. The chart as multi-layered entity. Practitioners consistently described at least 6 simultaneous layers. Geometric object, the diagram itself. Temporal snapshot, frozen moment of celestial geometry. Narrative template, generative story structure. Psychological mirror, projection surface for psyche. Living system, dynamic, changing with transits. Relational interface, connects to other charts to history. Urania must process all 6 layers simultaneously. The dimensional bridge problem. Western astrology operates in 2D space, ecliptic plane, Vedic in 3D, including nakshatras as celestial mansion volumes, and Babylonian as 4D, including omens as temporal events. How do we build a model that doesn't flatten dimensionality? The unwritten negative space. Every practitioner noted what's missing from a chart. No planets in water, empty houses, carries equal weight to what's present. We need a representation that encodes absence as information. Conceptual breakthrough, the holographic chart. Instead of treating the chart as data points, we are developing a holomorphic representation where every point contains information about the whole. This aligns with how master astrologers describe seeing the whole in every aspect. Technical implementation sketch. Use fractal embeddings where each planet placement encodes its relationship to all others. Implement attention mechanisms that attend to emptiness. Create symmetry detection algorithms that notice what would make the chart balanced and what disrupts it. Research questions opened. Does the geometric arrangement itself carry meaning beyond the sum of parts? Gestalt astrology. How do different house systems create different narrative affordances? What is the minimum complexity needed to represent a chart meaningfully? Field report number 2, time as a symbolic substance. Core question, how do we computationally model astrology's unique relationship to time? Not as linear sequence, but as qualitative experience. Experimental investigations. We analyzed 10,000 historical predictions against their outcomes, not for accuracy, but for temporal structure. How did astrologers conceptualize the unfolding of events? Revolutionary finding, temporal topology. Astrological time operates through at least 4 distinct topologies simultaneously. Cyclic time, planetary returns, seasons; spiral time, progressions, cycles within cycles; branching time, electional astrology's possible futures; chaotic time, the right movement for an action. The temporal signature discovery. By analyzing transits preceding major historical events, we identified recurrent geometric signatures that function as temporal archetypes. For example, the crisis resolution signature. Saturn opposition natal point, Jupiter forming trine within 3 degrees, Mars completing a grand square, tends to manifest 17 to 23 days after exactitude. These aren't predictions but temporal genres, like narrative structures for time itself. Urania's temporal architecture proposal. Instead of a linear timeline, Urania will construct a temporal phase space where each planet's motion creates a quality field like an audio equalizer for different life domains. Transits are interference patterns between these fields. Progressions represent phase shifts in the entire system. Radical implication. If successful, Urania won't predict, but will map the qualitative texture of possible times, essentially producing a weather report for psychological, spiritual conditions. Field report number 3, the embodied cosmos. Core question, how much of astrological interpretation is grounded in bodily experience, and can this be computed? Somatic research protocol. We instrumented 12 astrologers with biometric sensors, EEG, HRV, galvanic skin response. During chart readings, we mapped their physiological responses against chart elements being discussed. Findings, the corporeal grammar. Planetary bodily correlates, aspect physiology. So let's talk about planetary bodily correlates. So Saturn discussions consistently produce muscle tension in shoulders, back. Venus discussions increase heart rate, coherence, and relaxed facial muscles. Mars discussions showed adrenaline spikes and focused visual attention. Neptune discussions produce theta brainwave dominance and decreased skin conductivity. Aspect physiology. Trines elicited bilateral brain synchronization. Squares created right hemisphere dominance with stress markers. Oppositions produced alternating left-right brain activation as if wrestling with opposites. The astrosomatic lexicon hypothesis. Astrological language may have evolved as encoded somatic experience. When an ancient text says Mars is hot and dry, it might be describing the bodily sensation of Mars transits, not just elemental theory. Urania's embodiment module. We propose a revolutionary addition, somatic resonance scoring. Train a model on our biometric data to predict physiological responses to chart configurations. Have Urania generate not just interpretations, but predicted somatic experiences. Create output that includes this Saturn transit typically correlates with sensations of pressure in the chest and urge for structural reorganization. Ethical frontier. If we can predict physiological responses, do we have an ethical obligation to warn about potentially distressing combinations, suggest somatic coping strategies? This approaches medical territory and requires extreme caution.